Man hires a woman and discovers she wears the same necklace as his daughter who disappeared years ago, triggering a shocking revelation.
In a modern and bustling city, where skyscrapers mingled with historic buildings and where the constant sound of traffic blended with the murmur of hurried conversations, stood the majestic Montclair Mansion. It was an imposing structure, with architectural lines that combined the classic and the contemporary, situated in one of the city's most prestigious neighborhoods. Anyone who passed through its wrought iron gates was immediately struck by the grandeur of the well-maintained gardens and the aura of luxury and exclusivity emanating from every stone of the building. The owner of this magnificent residence was Edward Montclair, a successful businessman who had built an empire with his investment skills and business acumen. Although Edward was admired by many for his competence and power, those who knew him well were aware that he carried within him a deep sadness, a shadow that had followed him ever since the mysterious disappearance of his only daughter, Isabella, years before. Isabella had vanished without a trace when she was just a child, and since then, Edward's life, though materially prosperous, had never been the same. The tragedy of Isabella's disappearance had turned the Montclair mansion from a happy home into a place marked by silence and sorrow. Unable to overcome the loss, Edward immersed himself in work as a distraction, becoming even more successful, but also emotionally distant. To many, he was the embodiment of the modern man. Powerful, wealthy, but isolated in his own loneliness. 2 years after Isabella's disappearance, Edward made a decision that surprised everyone around him. He remarried, this time to Victoria, a woman of breathtaking beauty, whose origins were shrouded in mystery. Victoria was known for her elegance and sophistication, always involved in social and charitable events, which quickly placed her at the center of high society's attention. However, behind the facade of the perfect wife was an ambitious and calculating woman, whose main motivation was to climb even higher on the social ladder and cement her position as the new Mrs. Montclair. Victoria, though fascinated by the luxurious lifestyle Edward provided, could never erase the shadow of Isabella that loomed over the mansion. Photos of the girl, memories of her childhood, and stories told by the staff who knew her deeply irritated Victoria. She felt that no matter what she did, she would never be able to occupy the place Isabella held in Edward's heart. To further complicate the family dynamic, Victoria brought her niece, Cassandra, a beautiful but dubious young woman who quickly settled into the residence as if it were her own home. Cassandra, like her aunt, possessed striking beauty with long black hair and penetrating green eyes, but her personality was marked by envy and malice. Raised by Victoria after the premature death of her parents, the bond between them was more of convenience than affection. Victoria saw Cassandra as a useful ally for her own plans, while Cassandra saw her aunt as an opportunity to achieve the pleasures and luxuries she had always desired. The relationship between Cassandra and Victoria was complex. Despite their closeness, there was a constant tension between them. Cassandra, aware of Victoria's position as the wife of a millionaire, coveted the attention and privileges her aunt enjoyed. She believed that, with time, she could even replace Victoria if she played her cards right. This sense of competition only fueled her envy, especially when Victoria did not hesitate to remind her niece that, despite everything, she was still the secondary figure in that family dynamic. The atmosphere in the Montclair mansion, already tense due to Edward's tragic past, became even more charged with the presence of these two women. However, things took an unexpected turn when Edward decided to hire a new maid, a young woman named Clara. Clara was a young woman of notable beauty, albeit in a subtle way. Her long brown hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders, and her deep blue eyes conveyed a mix of kindness and melancholy. There was something in her appearance that suggested an untold story, something that intrigued those who knew her. In addition to her beauty, Clara possessed an aura of serenity that seemed to calm the environment around her, contrasting with the hustle and bustle of city life and the tension that permeated the Montclair mansion. From the very first day, Clara proved to be a dedicated and efficient employee. She performed her tasks with precision and discretion, always maintaining a respectful and modest demeanor. Her presence, however, did not go unnoticed by Victoria and Cassandra. Victoria, with her sharp instinct for detecting threats, quickly realized that there was something about Clara that could destabilize the delicate balance she was trying to maintain in the house. What bothered Victoria the most was not just Clara's beauty, but a specific detail: a necklace the young woman wore. It was a simple but elegant piece of jewelry, with a teardrop-shaped diamond pendant mounted on a delicate white gold chain. Design was unmistakable, as it was identical to the one Isabella used to wear before she disappeared. Edward had gifted his daughter that piece of jewelry on her 5th birthday, and for Victoria, seeing it again was like seeing a ghost from the past. The sight of the necklace on Clara's neck stirred a deep sense of discomfort in Victoria. She knew that Isabella's necklace had vanished along with the girl, and seeing that piece of jewelry there before her eyes felt like a portent that buried secrets might come to light. Moreover, Victoria began to notice that Edward was increasingly interested in Clara, asking questions about her life and observing her with a curiosity he had not shown in a long time. The growing closeness between Edward and Clara did not go unnoticed by Cassandra. The young woman, already feeling overshadowed by her aunt, began to harbor a fierce envy towards the new maid. Cassandra, Clara was an intruder who needed to be eliminated before she could become a real threat. Intending to get closer to Victoria and prove her worth, Cassandra began to conspire against Clara, joining her aunt in a plan to drive her out of the mansion. Victoria and Cassandra, united by their selfish motives, began to make Clara's life a living hell. Victoria, ever astute, ordered Clara to perform the most arduous and exhausting tasks, demanding perfection in every detail and severely punishing any mistake, no matter how small. Often, Clara was forced to work late into the night, with no rest, cleaning the vast halls of the mansion or organizing social events that Victoria hosted to maintain her position in society. Cassandra, on the other hand, took a more subtle but equally cruel approach. She used her beauty and charm to manipulate the other servants, encouraging them to treat Clara with disdain and humiliation. Whenever Cassandra passed by Clara, she never missed the opportunity to make cruel comments about her appearance or humble origins, always with a venomous smile on her lips. But what Cassandra enjoyed the most was provoking Clara about the necklace she wore, insinuating that the young woman did not deserve such a valuable piece of jewelry and that she had probably stolen it from someone. Clara, although deeply affected by this constant harassment, endured it all in silence. She desperately needed the job, as the money she earned helped support her adoptive family, which was facing financial difficulties. Additionally, there was something about the mansion that inexplicably drew her in, a sense of belonging she could not explain. The necklace, which was her most cherished possession, was a gift from her adoptive mother, only link she had to her uncertain past. However, Edward, increasingly intrigued by Clara, did not ignore the sense of familiarity she evoked. There was something about the young woman that reminded him of Isabella, not just the necklace, but also her sweet and gentle demeanor. Edward began to ask discreet questions about Clara's past, trying to learn more about her origins and her history. The answers he received, however, were vague and did not provide the clarity he sought. Meanwhile, Victoria, realizing that her attempts to get rid of Clara were failing, decided to intensify her action. One afternoon, she summoned Clara to her office, a luxuriously decorated space, mahogany furniture, and red velvet curtains. Victoria, sitting in her leather chair, looked at Clara with disdain before she began to speak. "Clara," she said with a cold voice, "I have been observing your behavior, and I must say that I am not satisfied. You may be efficient in your work, but your presence here is becoming an inconvenience." Clara, always respectful, lowered her eyes, trying to hide the nervousness she felt. "I'm sorry if I did something to displease you, ma'am," she replied calmly. Victoria stood up and began to walk around the desk, approaching Clara. "What bothers me, Clara, is your audacity," she said, stopping right in front of the young woman. "That necklace you're wearing, you know it belonged to Isabella, don't you? Where did you get it?" Clara looked up, surprised by the direct accusation. "This necklace was a gift from my adoptive mother. I didn't know it belonged to anyone before." Victoria laughed. There was bitterness in her laugh. "Oh, please don't underestimate me. I know you must have heard the stories about Isabella. Everyone in this house knows the tragedy that haunts us. But what interests me, Clara, is why you think you have the right to wear something that doesn't belong to you." Clara, feeling cornered, took a step back, instinctively holding the pendant in her hand. I didn't know, ma'am. If the necklace belonged to your daughter, I will return it." Victoria smiled maliciously, satisfied to have taken control of the situation. "You will do more than that, Clara. You will leave this house and never return. There is no place for someone like you here." Before Clara could respond, the office door suddenly opened, revealing Edward, who had overheard the last part of the conversation. He entered the room with a determined look and went directly to Victoria. "What is going on here?" he asked, voice firm. Victoria, visibly surprised by Edward's presence, tried to maintain her composure. "I was just discussing Clara's position in the house. I think she is no longer needed." Edward ignored Victoria's attempt to deflect and looked directly at Clara. "Clara, you mentioned that this necklace was a gift from your adoptive mother. Can you tell me more about her?" Clara, still holding the pendant, looked at Edward with eyes full of uncertainty. "My adoptive mother, sir, was a simple woman. She found me abandoned in a church when I was very young. I know nothing about my biological parents. This necklace, she always said it was a special gift, but I never knew where it came from. Edward, hearing these words, felt a chill run down his spine. Clara's story was similar to Isabella's, who had also vanished without a trace when she was still a child. He looked at the necklace more closely, and at that moment, a frightening possibility began to take shape in his mind. As Edward processed the information, Victoria tried to intervene. "Edward, dear, you can't be taking this seriously. This girl is clearly trying to deceive us." Edward raised his hand, silencing Victoria. He knew he couldn't ignore the coincidence. "Clara," he said gently, "would you allow me to have some tests done to confirm a suspicion?" Clara, still confused by the whole situation, nodded slowly. "Of course, sir. I will do whatever is necessary." From that moment on, the tension in the Montclair mansion increased significantly. Edward discreetly arranged for Clara to undergo a DNA test, pairing it with his own. As they awaited the results, the atmosphere in the house grew even more charged. Victoria and Cassandra intensified their provocations and abuses, trying to break Clara before the truth could be revealed. They made sure Clara's days were filled with humiliations and exhausting tasks, hoping that the young woman would not withstand the pressure and give up. Cassandra, in particular, became even more venomous. Knowing that if Clara was indeed Isabella, her entire plan to replace Victoria would be at risk. On one occasion, when she found Clara alone in the garden, Cassandra approached her with a sinister smile. "Do you really think you can compare to us?" Sandra whispered, her voice full of contempt. "You will never be more than a maid in this house, and when my aunt finally gets rid of you, no one will even remember your name." Clara, however, remained steadfast despite the pain she felt with each new attack. There was something within her that made her resist, a strength she didn't fully understand. Perhaps it was the feeling that, somehow, her destiny was tied to that house and that necklace she had always cherished so much. Finally, the day of the DNA test results arrived. Edward received the envelope with a mix of anxiety and hope, feeling that the answer he had sought for so many years was about to be revealed. He opened the envelope with trembling hands and read the contents. The words on the paper confirmed what he had feared and hoped for. Clara was indeed Isabella, his missing daughter. Edward felt an overwhelming wave of emotions as he read the result. Isabella, his beloved daughter, was alive and had been under his roof all this time without him knowing. He rushed to find Clara, who was in the garden, looking at the necklace in her hand. Seeing him approach with tears in his eyes, she knew that something important had happened. Edward knelt before her, holding her hands, and said the words Clara had always wanted to hear, even without knowing. "You are my daughter. You are Isabella." Clara, or rather Isabella, felt a whirlwind of emotions upon hearing that. Finally, all the questions about her past had been answered. She embraced Edward tightly, and the two cried together, relieved to finally find each other, but also mourning the lost years. The news of Isabella's discovery quickly spread through the mansion, and Victoria, upon learning that her deceit had been exposed, attempted one final maneuver. She packed her bags and tried to leave the mansion with as many possessions as she could carry. However, Edward, now fully aware of the extent of her malice, confronted her one last time. With a coldness he had never shown before, Edward told Victoria that she could never return to the mansion, and that he had already arranged the divorce. With nowhere else to turn, Victoria left the mansion, taking with her only the bitterness of her defeat. Desperate and aware that her luxurious future was about to collapse, Cassandra begged Edward to let her stay. She tried to use her charm and manipulation. Edward, now completely focused on his daughter, was not deceived. He ordered Cassandra to leave the house immediately, stating that there was no place for cruelty in his life anymore. With Victoria and Cassandra out of their lives, Edward and Isabella began to rebuild the relationship that had been interrupted years ago. The mansion, once a place of pain and suffering, now filled with laughter and hope. The necklace, which had been the link that reunited them, became a symbol of the unbreakable love between father and daughter. Isabella, now aware of her past, decided to use her real name and reconnect with the memories she had lost. She and Edward knew that the path to healing would be long, but they were willing to walk it together, leaving behind the ghosts that had haunted their lives, and embracing the future finally smiled upon them.
If you enjoyed this emotional story, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and leave your comment below. See you in the next video.